Hi, I'm Sue Finneron, and this is Get Your Shit Together. Of course, SHIT is an acronym for success, health, inspiration, and transformation, and that is what I hope to do with every episode of the Get Your Shit Together show. So today I wanted to talk to you about choices, about decisions that we have to make in life. Now, some are super simple, like what to have for dinner, although that's not always so simple. But some are major life choices that can change the direction of where your life will head. So recently, I had to make a very tough decision. Now, when I was working at the dealership, I had to learn to make decisions very, very quickly. I found when I was first starting out as general manager, I would be painstakingly slow over some decisions, like a newspaper ad, let's say. Was there enough white space? Was the spelling all right? Were the photos big enough? Was the color right? Was the image right? It went on. And before I knew it, I was second-guessing myself so much that I was wasting my day on one or two tough choices. Of course, then I ended up working longer, and anyway, I had to learn to make decisions quickly. And then not to dwell on the decision that I'd made, but if I'd made a mistake, I had to learn from it and not make the decision again. But recently, as I said, I had not a work decision to make, but a life choice. On February 14th of 2019, we found out that my mother-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. It's called duodenum cancer. It's kind of like part of pancreatic cancer, but it's stuffed way back in your body. And so by the time that they find it, it's usually too late to do anything about it. And that was the case with Frankie. Now, of course, I wanted to be there for her, for my family, and for my partner, Dave. Prior to Frankie's diagnosis, I had been planning a trip with my niece. She was going backpacking for a few months, and I had the opportunity to meet her in her last couple of weeks of her trip in Thailand. Now, if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, and if you don't, you should, you'll know that I made the choice to go on the trip to Thailand. Now, there were a lot of things involved in that choice. So many people's lives are affected. Now, of course, if it was any other trip, I would have canceled it. But this was a unique opportunity to spend time with my niece, Taylor. Now, I've been a big part of Taylor's life, and we've been very close ever since she was born. I never got to have any kids, so I always kind of felt, in a way, she was kind of like partially my kid. Thanks for sharing, Mike and Amber. Now, on the other side, I had Frankie and my family there. Now, of course, I sat down and I chatted with my partner, Dave. It was the first thing I did. And I told him how I was feeling. Kind of my first thought, and this is the worst first thought that you could possibly have, is what will people think of me if I make the choice to go on this trip to Thailand with my niece and I don't stay home to help look after Frankie? Now, you should never take what other people think of you into consideration when making a choice. It's not about them, it's about you. But that's the way our mind is kind of programmed to work, isn't it? What will people think? Of course, the most important person to me and what he thought was Dave. When I sat down with him, he was incredibly supportive, as he always is. And he said, well, you need to make the right choice, and I'll support you in any choice that you make. But you need to make the right choice for you. Of course, I thought about, how would I feel if it was me in his shoes? How would I feel if it was one of my parents that was suffering and needed help, and perhaps might pass on while I was away? Well, I know how I'd feel. I'd feel like I want him there. Selfishly, I'd feel like I want him to cancel everything and make my issues the most important thing. Now, lucky for me, he's not like me. He said that I should go. Of course, then I sat down with his mom. I sat down with Frankie. And I said, here's what I'm battling with. Now, she's an incredible lady. I should say she was. She was an incredible lady. And she said, you need to go on this trip. Don't worry about me. Now, of course, she passed about a week into my trip. And the day that she passed, I had a very, very hard time. I think I had a panic attack, actually. It's been pointed out to me that what I thought was just like a tough time was probably a panic attack. I filmed myself a little bit in Thailand after this happened so that you could see the effects of the decision and how it affected me. And would I have changed the decision that I made? Probably not. Do I regret making that decision? In some ways, I regret it very much. And I will always feel guilty. I think I feel a little bit guilty for not being here for my family. I'm going to show you this bit of clip from Thailand, and then when we come back, I'm going to go through kind of the steps and the process that I use when I'm making a life decision. So here it is in all its unrefined glory from Thailand. Hello everyone, this is Sue Finneron, and this is the Get Your Shit Together podcast on location. So I, as you can see, am sitting somewhere beautiful and warm. It's, well, pretty much what you might consider to be paradise. And I wanted to share what happened to me yesterday. So I have come down here to meet my niece, and she's been backpacking for the last few months and does an amazing job. And so I've spent the last week with her, and she's great. But spending a week with anybody that's not your significant other is a lot. And I guess I was having one of those female days, and I had a really hard day of travel. So I've never felt so old as I have on this trip. My age is really coming to light as I hang out with all these young backpacker people. Got up early in the morning, left this beautiful spot on Koh Tao in Thailand, and went to catch the ferry. I get there, and the ferry terminal is disgusting, and the ferry itself is disgusting, and I can smell kids' feet all the way over on the ferry, and the ferry's late. It takes way longer. And then when we get to where we're going, and we go on this taxi ride for at least a half an hour. So we finally arrive, and we find the villa where we are, and it's exactly like it is in the pictures, which is great. It's a beautiful little house. It's right on the beach, and it's on the edge of a resort. And we go for a walk in town. And Hadrin, which is in Koh Phangan, is really not a very nice town. It's where they have the full moon parties that, if you know anything about young people and backpacking, that's where they have the party. Beach is beautiful, but the town itself is, it's just not nice. And remember, Sue Princess. Anyway, so I get home, and I am not in a good place. I'm like hyperventilating, and I'm on the edge of tears. And sorry for the sunglasses. Obviously still not over it. My mother-in-law passed when I was away. My next door neighbor dog barking. Anyway, I feel really sad that I wasn't there for her and for my other half. And I guess I
am still getting over that. And to top it all off, bad travel day, probably a bad emotional female day, and I can't get it under control. And it's the middle of the night at home, and so I can't call home. It just hard. I knew I said goodbye when I left, and she said I had to go on this trip, but I couldn't cancel it. And I wasn't there, and it was a choice I had to make. I don't think that I regret the choice, but I might one day, I don't know. I keep getting reassurances from home that's all good, and it's just hard. And she was an amazing woman. And she begged for me, and she did all these wonderful things for me. And she was very healthy. And to go at 80 when we thought she'd live to be 100 was really sad. She was still golfing 3 times a week, and ate kale and walked 10,000 steps a day, and was an amazing person. And it's very sad that we lost her. Sometimes in life, we have really difficult choices to make. And this is one that I had to make, and there was no right and there was no wrong decision. And no matter what decision I'd made, I would have been upset. Either way, I would have lost out. And so I guess the point is you have to live with the decisions that you make and find a way to move forward. Maybe not over the top, but around. And this is crazy. Do you know what brought me out of my pacing, hyperventilating tears stupor? Which, by the way, when you're with a 19-year-old and you're apologizing for going through all this shit, and you're thinking, she must think I'm such a loser. What got me out of my stupor, I always bring my knitting, and so I sat down and I watched a crappy show on Netflix, and I started knitting, and it just got my mind away from it, and it calmed me down, and I got through it. Otherwise, I might still be pacing around the floor.
Now, as you can see, I was probably still suffering from a bit of anxiety when I filmed that. I've probably only felt that way about 6 times in my life, and it's always been major life events. What do I take into consideration when I'm making choices? Well, first, of course, is that your values matter. You need to make decisions based on your core values, your morals, and your beliefs. So in this instance, family was my value set. And unfortunately, it was family on both sides. And they were the most important. Now, of course, Frankie has only been in my life for the last 6 years, but Taylor's been in my life for the last 18 years. And so I didn't want to disappoint her. I didn't want to leave her on her own in Thailand. The next step is always learn from your past. And again, in this instance, I didn't really have much to fall back on because I hadn't been in this instance before. Next step, know what you know and know what you don't know. I sat down and I talked to Dave and I talked to Frankie, and I took all of that into consideration. Now, if you're talking about work life, you'd be surprised how many people out there will give you their opinions. Well, maybe not that surprised. No, but if you ask for help, you'll be surprised at how many people are willing to give you help. So in the automotive world, I could pick up the phone and there would be 6 different people I could talk to right away that were more than willing to help me out, tell me about their experiences and their lessons learned. So take advantage of that. That person might be your competition, but I know most people in business are willing to help another business person out and give them a helping hand. So ask for help. Next thing is keep it in perspective. View it from all points. So another useful tool is to think of all the great things that can happen if you make that choice or decision. And then, of course, you want to flip it to the other side and think about what's the worst thing that could happen? What are all the bad things that can happen if I make this decision? Now, usually, it'll come out pretty strong. What's the best? What's the worst? And you'll be able to see it, especially if you write it down on paper. It'll come out loud and clear what decision you should make. Another thing is to use your gut. A lot of times in life we ignore what our bodies are telling us, but our minds and our bodies are of course interconnected, and they're pretty smart. Subconsciously, our gut can guide us a lot of times in the right direction. Now, the next thing is do not procrastinate. Now, Mia and I are going to talk about this in another episode. We're going to talk about procrastination and perfectionism. And I know you're always wanting to make the perfect choice or the perfect decision, but it probably doesn't exist. And so don't put off making it because you need to make the right call. The other thing is, if you procrastinate on hard decisions, you're going to suffer from a lot of sleepless nights, and that's no good for anybody. So don't procrastinate. Now, once you've made a decision, don't second guess it. Live in that decision, make the best possible case scenario that you can out of the decision that you've made, and if you made the wrong one, learn from it. Learn how to do it better next time and don't make the same mistake. If we don't make mistakes in life, if we don't fail at things, we'll never learn. So it's okay to be wrong. Well, I hope that you've gotten something out of this episode on choices, and I really appreciate you tuning in and spending the time. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on any sort of social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can also download this on SoundCloud so you can take it with you to go. Thanks again for joining me on Get Your Shit Together.